All right, gentlemen, welcome.
Pleasure to be here today, Pat. We've got, I was saying earlier, I think we have our best dressed by a landslide guest on the show today, bringing us up a notch, which is always great.
Yeah, Gerald, a pleasure to have you here, man. You're a busy individual, and I really do genuinely appreciate you making time in your schedule to chat with us about what you have going on.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. I know it's different being in a courtroom. You want me to give a quick tour real quick of where I am right now?
Yeah, for people, listening, you might want to go to the YouTube channel and find this video, but yeah, give us a little tour. And then once you finish the tour, give us a short bio.
Yeah, great seal of state of Ohio. Let me flip this up around so you can see the courtroom. We're in my courtroom. There's the witness stand right here where the witnesses are seated, and then you have your jury box. Of course, the state always sits closest to the jury. And there's the defense counsel defendants table. Boz, you've probably been there a few times. So
I was going to ask what Pat's most familiar part of the courtroom was, but you stole my joke.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Behind the bench, I'm Judge Gerald Parker. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, we can take it away where you want to go. I will say, I am really sore still because I had a CrossFit competition this past weekend on Saturday. Shout out to the Walking Deadlifters, who we made.
Great name.
It was a monster mash. We made podium, so that was pretty cool. In my 41 years old, still got a little bit left in the tank.
Yeah, so man, I love it.
We made it, our team of 4, so that was a lot of fun, but I feel like trash still.
I was just throwing down on a whim as a master's athlete. That's legit.
Still holding on, man. Still holding on.
We see the courtroom, people might have just heard that you're a judge, but law is obviously a huge area. So, what is your niche? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a Montgomery County prosecutor. For everyone who's familiar or who is familiar with Ohio, there's the city of Dayton. Dayton sits in the county of Montgomery. I preside over all felonies, from your felony ones, which are high-level, high-violence, serious crimes, your rape, murder, serious guns cases, and really serious drug offenses, down to your felony 5, less serious possession cases, less serious gun cases as well. And I also hear your civil cases, anything $15,000 or over. So I hear a lot of the heavy stuff, civil cases as well as criminal cases. But, when I started as a Montgomery County prosecuting attorney, I did go into civil practice as well. I went into juvenile as a magistrate, which is basically a baby judge that helps out the judges because there's so many cases in juvenile court. And I ran for judge in 2018 and was elected in 2018. I was actually our first African-American male to serve on the Montgomery County Common Pleas Court bench. So that was pretty cool. And trying to reshape and reform the way our judicial system works, operates, and have been here since 2018. And, for a lot of folks who think they know about what happens in the judicial system, it's always important to go in there. A lot of people say, can I come to your courtroom? Obviously, absolutely. Tax dollars. So if anybody ever wants to come into a courtroom and see what actually goes on, they typically can. It's, it's for the public. So I'm very, 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 very involved in wanting people to really understand what happens in a courtroom. So that's the kind of short snippet. I also been a CrossFitter since 2011, 2012. My wife and I are members of Centerville CrossFit, where Amanda Barnhart started her journey, and we still just support Amanda Barnhart, her awesome husband Wes, and how hard she works. It's been amazing to watch her grow and just be a great representative from our gym, from the state of Ohio, women. It's just cool to know somebody like her. So shout out to Amanda. And run a couple programs that involve CrossFit in Centerville. Our gym specifically brings at-risk youth from primarily the Dayton area who typically would not have access to a CrossFit gym. And every Thursday at 5 p.m., 5:30, they are brought about anywhere from 4 to 6 are brought. It used to be much higher before COVID. We started this in 2016, 17, where we would just bring them to our gym. They'd be fed. Of course, they'd work out. get them outside of their comfort zone, break them down a little bit to build them up. And we've been doing that since. And like I said, COVID knocked the numbers down a little bit, so we usually bring about 4 to 6. But we have a lot of opportunities to serve this demographic. And then as a judge here, implementing programs to help serve the community as well. So as you can tell, I don't just sit here in the seat, and a lot of other judges here, we don't just sit here in the seat and figure out whether somebody goes to jail or prison or somebody is on probation. We do a lot outside of these courtroom walls to serve the community. So,
oh man,
yeah, wow.
I'll tell you what. I mean, that's a heck of an intro, and actually precisely why I wanted to have you on the show. You and I have known each other for a while now, and you have. Selfishly, I feel like you've given me a lot more than I've given you. I've leaned on you for a lot of advice and sought a lot of counsel from you on different topics over the years. And you've been a heck of a friend and ally behind the scenes. And so if I figured maybe I could give you some, a bit of a platform, because you've got a lot of cool things going on to help spread that word and get people fired up about it. It's absolutely the least I could do. And in my mind, as we say all the times, you mentioned Amanda Barnhart, huge fan. She's phenomenal. Games athletes are phenomenal. But people like you are why I find games athletes boring, is another way to say it. Because, what you're doing, don't get me wrong, this is phenomenal. It really is what the human body is capable of. But what you're doing with fitness and with strength and conditioning, with CrossFit, that is impactful and meaningful on an entirely different level than just seeing that somebody can run this fast or lift that much. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. But before I launch into my 15 questions, I don't know if you got anything in your mind there, Boz.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, just clearing my throat there. Yes, I agree. I think that the depth that so many people in the CrossFit community have is so commendable, and it's really cool to see that in different ways. I guess the first thing I'm really curious about is, how did the program start? Like, whose idea was it to start reaching out to these individuals, and how did that start?
Oh, absolutely. So everywhere I have been, I have tried to do more than the job description. Okay. So when I was a prosecuting attorney, working with big brothers and big sisters, when I went to private practice, assisting those who are restored citizens or individuals who are just come back from prison, and helping with their, we call certifications of qualifications of employment, basically making avenues for them to get employment a little bit easier now that they are out of prison, as well as expungements and sealings, things like that. When you're in juvenile court and you see that there's so many juveniles that did not have the same access to so many things that we have, you knew that, okay, this is an opportunity with a great gym that Centerville CrossFit is. The owner at the time, Mitch Lyons, shout out to Mitch Lyons, and now James Reckham, who has continued this program. I brought it to both of them, and they said this is something that they wanted to be a part of. We are a part of, I'm the president of Building Bridges, which is a nonprofit essentially that works with at-risk youth and those who are in the juvenile court system to use workplace therapy, get them outside of their comfort zone, even allow them to make some money, to do something that they haven't done before. And, the same type of things that we take for granted, transportation and housing, food, they don't have that. They don't have it at a whim, just like many of us. So we essentially said, as a gym, how can we support these kids? And through Building Bridges, that is at bbyyouth.org. So bbyouth.org to find more information about Building Bridges, has a lot of different things. When I was a magistrate in juvenile court, because again, I'm not in juvenile court anymore, but still running that program, it wasn't as if somebody would come in front of me, they, threw a rock through a bus window, and I'm like, all right, you got to do, Fran. That's just not how it works. Every kid had their own avenue. Some were interested in, assisting with animal rescue, and some kids were interested in the arts, and we had some kids that you knew that if they had the same opportunity to play sports like I did and play in college, they could have had the same opportunities, but they did not, just based off of not winning the parent lottery. So we give them that exposure, and then we have a great gym that feeds these young individuals. And they just get, it's just like we always talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. We want to make sure that even though their lives have been very, very difficult based off family structure, we can bring them to our gym. And it's not just giving to these kids. We become different. This isn't just a, hey, look what we're doing. I always say, I don't want to be seen. We don't want to be seen. We want to be seen doing. And what we are doing is serving. And what happens is other gyms start seeing it. And other folks find where they are in their situation of employment. You don't have to be a judge or a public official, elected official, a public servant to serve, no matter where you are. And you can provide opportunities and avenues. It doesn't mean start necessarily a nonprofit. It just means taking a few hours out of your day or week to serve somebody. And that's
I got
what
a question for you, Gerald.
That's what we do. Yeah.
The program at the gym that you're saying these people show up to once a week, is that the same as Kenda Court, or is it associated with that?
Correct. That is not. We can get there in a second.
Okay. All right. So So we'll get to that in a second. And there's a really cool video associated with that you sent me that I'll have to see if we can put in the show notes that people will be able to click on. So
absolutely.
What discretion do you have as a judge? Because I'm ignorant to all of this, so it's fascinating to me. How much discretion do you have to do programs like this, to offer this? Like, so for example, could every judge around the world, at their own discretion, some kid, some juvenile, some whatever that made a dumb mistake, however serious it was, comes up and that judge can say, on top of whatever the normal fine that the state or whatever would penalize you with, you know what I think would really serve you well? This side program that's unique and different and challenging, are those out there everywhere or not really? And you as the judge have to make a lot to really implement that.
That is a fantastic question. So one of the cool things about being in Montgomery County in the court that we are in, there's 11 judges here, and we actually, and this kind of goes into what I'm doing now, we actually have 5 specialized dockets. Okay. And what does that mean? A specialized docket is simply a docket that serves a particularized need. Everyone is familiar with the opioid epidemic that's pretty much crushed a lot of parts of our country, particularly Ohio. But we have folks who are ordered to probation that specifically go before a judge. For instance, one of the courts is MARC Court. It's Men's Achievement Recovery Court for men struggling with substance abuse addiction. So our court has a men's treatment court. It has a RISE court. So recovery is empowering for women. So it's a women's treatment, men's and a women's treatment court as well. We have a veterans court. Obviously, we want to support our veterans struggling with PTSD, mental health, substance abuse. So we have a veterans court track that another judge handles. And then we also have a mental health court. These are all things that everyone would probably agree is a struggle for those who even aren't in the criminal justice system. But these are individuals who have either pled guilty and agreed to be a part of these programs and are ordered to go to these programs. In the event that they do not follow through with certain sanctions, yes, on top of them or above their head is the sanction of prison. But we can do better than that, because 95% of people that are sent to prison or sent to jails, guess what? They get out. So then we have to figure out what to do next. We hear a lot about folks coming home from prisons and what we can do to help those. But we've got about 3,000 people on probation who are just one bad decision away of being sentenced to prison. So I mentioned mental health courts for women, men and women. I mentioned veterans court. And then also I mentioned the court for mental health. I then started a court called Kenda Court. Kenda means to conquer, to overcome, and defeat. When we looked at the numbers and looked at the individuals that were in these specialized dockets, majority of them were not people of color. Frankly, 80% of individuals who are in specialized dockets for these were not being referred. And
I found that so fascinating. You said that these programs were available, but when you looked at the numbers in the video I watched from you, that people of color, specifically Black males 18 to 29, weren't enrolled. Were they choosing not to go in? It was somebody keeping them out. Like, why, if the program and service was there, why are these people not in it?
Good question. And that is a question that all the courts have to answer, because that's a question among courts across the country. If you look at every study that shows how the success rates of specialized dockets work, unfortunately, it's one of those things where, here again, African Americans, Black defendants were not getting that same type of opportunities and resources. And we looked at our numbers, and out of the 100 and I'd say 50 people on those specialized dockets, 20 of those were people of color. 13 of those were from Veterans Court. Interestingly enough, that the majority of folks that were in these specialized dockets were veterans that served, and or Black individuals who had served, leaving only about 7 people that were in the other docket. So I looked at that, and for a host of reasons that we could talk about on another show, we have the majority of individuals who are white being provided with these opportunities. Another issue that we looked at is not to say that there are not Black defendants who are struggling with mental health and substance abuse, but there is a gun violence issue in many of these communities of color, period. It's no secret. And a lot of the defendants, I think I have 40% of my docket is comprised of Black men. And again, as we said, very few were in these specialized dockets. However, many of them did have gun possession charges, did have possessions not for use, but typically for sale, were in violent communities that there were gun violence. Many of these communities underserved, underrepresented, undereducated communities. So we came with our amazing probation department, which you can tell is amazing because we already have these specialized dockets. I said, well, what about a specialized docket that caters to this need as it pertains to, violence in communities and gun violence? And they said, well, we need this because we have a lot of young Black men, 18 to 29, that we're losing to gun violence and who are on the brink of being close enough to being involved in gang violence. It's just by the numbers. So we wanted to do something about it. And the other judges, as well as our probation department, whose head, his name is Carlos Walker, said, well, we have a curriculum that could be used for this demographic. And how this works is every single week they're ordered to appear before me. They're also ordered to complete a culturally proficient curriculum that caters to that demographic. What we were doing before is we were placing these Black men, 18 to 29, with folks who are struggling with fentanyl, opioid, and substance abuse. And they're looking at us, and they're looking at these judges like, why am I here? Okay, I'm just wanting to make sure I don't go home and I don't get shot based off the community that I live in. So we have been able to use a curriculum called the HEAT curriculum, which stands for Rehabilitation, Empowerment, Accountability, and Therapy. And the subjects of the HEAT curriculum are culturally proficient for this demographic. So we just want to make sure that everyone who comes through the criminal justice system is being assisted. And it does help, obviously, being a Black male, relatively younger, even though I don't feel like it after that competition. It helps because, when I tell them, and when we have these status dockets, we call them, and I say, well, how many of you have been shot by a police officer? And many of them, of course, they don't raise their hand. But how many of you shot by somebody that looks like you? And over half of them raise their hand. These are conversations that we can have. Now, it's a lot deeper as to why those things are happening. Right. But we can also have conversations with respect to interactions with police officers and also providing opportunities for jobs, for housing, transportation. And at the end of the day, they either receive it or they don't. If they do not, then above their head is prison. But we at least have to give that opportunity. And to go back to your question, when you have this opportunity, discretion of resources here, we at least have to give them a shot. Now, for the record, this court isn't for, somebody who's been charged and convicted of a serious violent offense. You murder somebody, it's not like, oh, well, let's figure this out. No. You're going to prison. Rape, you're going to prison. Serious aggravated robberies with gun specifications, you're going to prison. However, we're trying to get them before their sentence so that way we can make some changes in the justice system. And we've been having a lot of success. These guys come back. We have...
it's a year long, right?
No, I'm there with our probation department and other team service providers. So I'll be presiding over to check on them. We have a speaker coming in who's probably been either a restored citizen, somebody who has maybe come from prison to speak to these individuals. We also have employers coming in to say, hey, we're hiring. This week, we're on the topic of intimate partner violence. So it makes sense to have men come in and women come in to talk about intimate partner violence. I believe October is domestic violence month. And also have those conversations. This is not me up here preaching. It's one of those things where we have a lot of resources here that get provided to them. And we have that every single week as well on Thursdays. We'll have it tomorrow at 1:00 as well.
How long's the program?
It is a 9-month curriculum. Okay, so it's a 9-month curriculum. Now, you have to be on probation for a year at minimum. So attached to that 9-month curriculum, there's also another set of curriculums that last called decision points, we want to make sure that their mind is ready to make these changes. Don't waste my time. If we give you this opportunity and you don't want to do it, well, guess what? There's jail, there's prison, there's other correctional-based facilities to help with their issues. But we do have screening processes to make sure that those individuals who want to be involved in this court are involved in this court. So that's kind of the lengthy way of how we are doing things. But to your point, I have a lot of discretion. I mean, if I wanted to make somebody write an essay on something, I could do that. Now, you have to be cognizant of their abilities because education, I mean, we don't have, I know out of Washington or Seattle, they don't have University of Washington Huskies or Ohio State graduates coming before me. Unfortunately, many of the folks coming here are undereducated, under-resourced, and underserved. But there are a lot of different ways that we can be creative and see if we can, move them forward and turn onto a different street and a different pathway. So that's the great thing about this role in this position.
I get a question, which is, I would assume the goal of the program, and I'm not judging, genuinely curious, the goal of the program or a metric you would want to validate is, does it work? I mean, so do you have the data from before this program was implemented, how many people would make another appearance in front of you, like, I recognize you, and now it's not because I have to assume these people, I've never walked a mile in their shoes, so I'm not going to act like I have any sense of what they're dealing with, but I have to assume they're going to these classes, this program or whatnot, which I'm sure is wonderfully run and well-intentioned, but then they go home every night back to their same neighborhood, their same friend group, their same potential pool of bad decisions, their same stressors. I can't imagine what that's like. So what has it been like in actuality on the other side?
That's a good question. So 30 years of research have said specialized dockets work, period. The alternative, of course, is just sending everybody to jail, sending everybody to prison, right? Or just a minor slap on the wrist and say, hopefully, and hope for the best. But when you have the opportunity to equip and provide tools, what we have learned is that when we order them to come every single week for this hour and a half, in fact, tomorrow they'll be here for intimate partner violence, and there'll be a employer coming to say, if anyone is interested in, we are hiring.
That's cool.
So somebody will be here tomorrow also to say, hey, we are hiring if anyone wishes to fill out an application. Another thing that's happening after my Kenda Court is we have what's known as Brunner Literacy Center. We've got 4 guys working on getting their GED. Okay. So now what I can tell you is we started this program 2 years ago and we just implemented the curriculum. I know where everybody is. I know that these folks are showing up. And yes, there are some folks that just aren't ready, mature enough to get it. And we're just going to work with them. And if I don't see them, I can issue a capias, a warrant, and I'll find them. I got my officers, sheriffs that will find them, right? But we have not really had to do that very often. The majority of these folks are here and they keep showing up because they're getting something that they never received before. And at the end of the day, I can say that I did provide this to you. If they do, we had about 8 graduate at the last graduation in June, which was great. So if you get a chance, the video that shows we've got a lot of success stories. But we weren't. The alternative is to do nothing. For the record, the alternative for everybody. The alternative for everybody to say, I wish that demographic and that group would get it together. Or we have folks who are in positions to be able to say we are doing something, and we can say that we did, in fact, do something. So while I define success as in this scenario it is individually based, right? I've got guys who are about to get their GED and about to graduate from Kenda Court, and that's going to be great. Now, after that, they're a free citizen American to do what they wish. Could somebody get harmed or harm somebody down the road? Absolutely, but I can say I did, as opposed to nothing. We had 2 guys get murdered senselessly within the past year, just gun violence, murdered, and one of the topics was survival, and he was excited to come for the next week for the topic of survival, but he was murdered over the weekend. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody in front of you at that podium that I showed you all, and then they either overdose or they commit suicide or they're unfortunately murdered or commit some other offense. So yeah, they're free to do what they wish outside of here, but when you're under the guise of the judge, obviously that does add a little bit more teeth. So to me, when we are getting folks graduated successfully, we're moving towards keeping track when they leave here. But at the end of the day, Once you're done with, when you're done with the court
Mm-hmm.
system, you don't want to have anything to do with us anymore either.
Boz, I know you've got a hard out here in a couple minutes. Anything on your mind before we need to punch out of here?
Well, I mean, it's just so fascinating. So many different directions we could go. I'm really curious. It sounds like there's a pretty holistic perspective being taken here. From education to kind of
Right.
this whole. What I'm trying to say is taking it back to the CrossFit tie-in. How much does exercise play a factor in this, and what have you noticed as a significant outcome from that? Like because to me, I guess that could be one of those elements that could be seen as less important in a program as wide-ranging and kind of holistic as this. So why is it important, and what have you seen from, maybe some of these individuals that haven't had that kind of outlet before?
Well, to your point, I think it's important that I stay relatively fit and stay healthy to show them the importance of why it's important to stay healthy and fit. I played college football, and I still try to work out as best I can, and I want them to know that I try to work out and keep my, stay healthy as best I can as well. We have those conversations. We have doctors, physicians, therapists coming in to talk to them about the importance of taking care of themselves as well, because especially when you're from underserved, under-resourced communities, they don't just have Anthem or Blue Cross Blue Shield. They don't have just the same types of abilities that we do that are easier when it comes to healthcare. But we have to address it. We can't not address it. It's important too for them to get to get uncomfortable. We do that at CrossFit all the time, and there is something to be said. And I don't know if you read the book, The Comfort Crisis, talking about how we're living progressively sheltered, sterile, temperature controlled, overfed, under-challenged, safety-netted lives. We can still pass on those types of sentiments to people who are struggling, to say, hey, we have people coming into this courtroom that have also been through where you've been through and are making it and changing their lives for the better. So there is a connection with taking care of yourself and your body. And it doesn't have to mean you have to, be able to do Murph. We want to make sure that these understand the importance, because again, the communities that they're in, when we bring those kids going back to juvenile, when we bring those kids to Centerville and they get fed really good food with greens and purples and reds as vegetables, that's not in the communities that many of these individuals serve. You have a fast food restaurant here. You've got a drive-through here. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Whereas there's like 4 Krogers in the areas of Centerville and the Whole Foods and anything you could ask for. So we shouldn't be surprised when we see some of the issues that we see. So you're right. Holistic is the approach.
Yeah, I think that's great. And again, I think that's one of those things that when you look at the totality of what somebody may need in order to get back on a good path in life, I think sometimes that can just be glossed over as, oh, well, that's something later. That's extra. You don't worry about yourself on the physical realm until you have these other things in order. And I think it's great that you guys see the value in that. And I'm sorry, I have to jump here, but I'm so excited to hear the rest of the conversation that you and Pat have. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Boz. How many people have told you guys that when they say, "Yeah, I'd like to try CrossFit, but I need to get in shape first before I do CrossFit." Yeah. Everyone says it all the time, but we go right to the source of what is needed, and we don't wait.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I will catch you guys a little later on.
All right, Boz.
And, we'll see you.
Yep.
All right, now that he's gone, we can get down to business.
Yeah, seriously, I was waiting for him.
So I remember, and I don't think it was during an interview that you and I did. I think maybe it was during a chat. But one of the things you just said it was just another couple words in the sentence and easy to gloss over was like people showing up to the gym. You expect to get in a workout, but they get fed.
Right.
I mean, talk about the basic human needs of food and shelter and clothing. And those basic human needs, nothing extravagant, nothing whatever, those aren't being met. And I thought I remembered one story you told me of a young man that his stomach was growling or something, and you gave him, you asked him what he had. He had like a half a Subway sandwich like a couple of days ago or something like that.
Yeah. That's when we realized we weren't even doing enough. Just bringing them out of their comfort zone and working them out. How the food part started was we had a young man, and I think I told you every Thursday they are brought to the gym, typically 5:30, and they work out an hour and a half hour, and then are fed. And this was years ago when one of the kids was taking a knee, and he just looked bad. And I remember the owner at the time was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I haven't eaten I've been eating in 2 days." And it was Thursday, and Tuesday obviously was 2 days ago at the time, and it was eye opening because school was out. They were on spring break, and he was usually getting fed.
Right.
School. He was usually getting fed at lunch and maybe a snack. Without school, he was not eating. And we were like, this is unbelievable. How I've never met somebody that hasn't eaten purposefully in 2 days. Right. So the gym continues to chime in with their gifts and with their food and making different types of food for these guys. And you can just tell they just look different. They eat it. There's leftovers they can for them. Then they can take food home to their families. So again, shout out to James Reckup and Centerville CrossFitter, other gyms that's across the country, because it is just a simple way to say, hey, how can we get you here? How can we be a part of something bigger than ourselves?
You got so many questions. That's so cool and so meaningful as far as I'm concerned. I mean, obviously you're doing it for the individuals that need the help, but for being real people who are also selfish. It would make me feel great to know that I was doing that for somebody else. I would think it's like an everybody wins sort of a situation, right? Like you're serving somebody else, which makes you feel good. The people receiving your servitude, if that's a word, they're improving for. Like it's an everybody wins sort of situation. So if gyms are hearing this, or if members of gyms are hearing this, and it sounds incredible, they would love to start this program. I'm going to be very coarse and unsophisticated with my words, but it's to paint a picture of how this could be a tough thing to approach. I just can't imagine some random member coming and be like, hey, I heard this great podcast that Boz and I did, and you know what? We should bring some like potentially violent potential felons into the gym to work out once a week. The owner would be like, what? What are you talking about? So that's obviously my idiot way to explain it. But how would you, what would be the words you would give to somebody who thinks this sounds amazing to bring it up as a potential opportunity?
Absolutely. You do not have to go to a juvenile justice center or a juvenile court in order to find kids that are struggling with
fair enough.
With the bare essentials and needs. It is not that far. It is right around the corner from your house. It does not need to be a group. It does not need to be a judge or a magistrate of some sort. There are kids, there are people, period, that are just struggling, and you know where they are. So I happen to be in a position that gives me access to be able to provide, and an awesome gym in Centerville CrossFit that says, hey, let's do this. But I'm of the opinion that wherever you work, whether you're a banker, you can assist folks in understanding the banking system and just how to even open up a bank account and say, hey, let's work with, if you're affiliated with a church or affiliated with any type of organization. Those aren't that hard to find. I think it comes down to whether or not, you want to find an avenue or find a way to provide the access that you have to somebody else, right? And you know that person doesn't have it. Even tutoring is something I've always felt something just happens. Something is just different when you do something for someone else. As parents, we do it, and it's just because we're supposed to be doing it and we love it. We don't expect to get anything back. And there's often times where I have served and even you might get cussed out for whatever reason, but you just don't know what that person is going through. But I don't think it should be made into this huge mathematical strategic thing. There are people out here that need to be served. Right now, we're struggling right now we understand not just since COVID, but we have people that are your next door neighbors. It's okay to ask how they're doing and then just following up with the answer and just waiting to hear what that answer is, and I just, simple as that.
What you just said right there. Yes. Simple as that. But man, not to have, I don't care where this podcast goes. We go where we want to go. But in my humble opinion, man, that's what the world needs, and it's what we haven't done in a long time. Reaching out to a neighbor,
It
taking
sounds
that step, saying hello, knocking on somebody's door, and then, the whole serving others thing, which you said is so mission critical, that serving others at its base is putting somebody else's needs superior to your own needs, which, and not to paint with a broad brush, but that doesn't seem to be common these days. There's a lot of selfishness out there in the world, and so even just doing something as simple as that doesn't cost you any money. You don't need to buy any fancy gear. It just requires you to make some different decisions or present yourself differently, or set some different priorities when you wake up in the morning, and start to put some people before you. And in your experience, just that simple thing, regardless of the community that you have available, like you said, you have a unique community available.
correct.
Somebody else doesn't need to try to replicate your community, but just going where you can and putting those folks first, and just start there. Is it just that simple,
Yeah.
and see what happens?
And that's where I think you hit the nail on the head is, we are, even if once a month you thought of somebody, because there's not like we don't have enough information out there to know that people are struggling, you know. Um, and I was about to do a competition back in 2012. We have a workout called Becky, after one of our CrossFitter named Becky, in September. We do it every September, for suicide prevention. And Becky and I were ready to do a competition. We were signed up, and Becky took her life. And ever since then, it's just like, what else could I say? And Becky is somebody who, we knew from the gym. I didn't need to go to downtown or some rural area to find Becky. Becky was right next to me, So I feel like I know that there are more people than we realize in our neighborhoods, on our streets, that just want to be seen, felt, and to be heard. And I just encourage everybody just once a month to find that one person, even if it's just once a month, and just say, hey, I want to check in and say, how are you doing? Is
Because
there anything
there's struggle everywhere in the spectrum, right? There's struggle
Absolutely.
on the side of, I haven't had a meal in 2 days.
Correct.
And there's struggle on the other side, where you might have the neighbor, the business associate, the whatever, that has the fancy car and the fancy house, and then they commit suicide. You're like, what? I thought that person had it all. I thought they had no worries in this world. Like, I think you find struggle if you really peel back the layers and allow somebody to be vulnerable and have an actual open, genuine conversation. I think you can find struggle darn near anywhere.
Absolutely. That's completely true. And with the stigma of mental health, right? I'm a culprit of it too. Social media, we're on it all the time. We
Oh
see
man,
nothing but fakeness
that's
all
a bunch of
day.
lies, man.
It's nothing but lies, but we eat it up, and it's so. In order to counter that, the best thing for me is to do and to serve someone else. And if I wasn't judged, I'd be doing it the same way, and I'd be doing it wherever I was and however I felt that I've been placed in a position to do that. And you have to also understand that there's times when I've provided, or I've cooked the meals, or I have tutored. And I remember one time I was in a housing area, an underserved housing area, and I remember just cooking hot dogs and hamburgers, and folks were coming down, and I was providing it. And one woman was like, "This ain't cooked more. This should be cooked more. You didn't cook this." Now, deep down, you all know what I wanted to say.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to think about the fact that
Thank you, man.
I have to remember where she is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what she's going through. I feel like we don't think about that enough, about what somebody else might be going through. And I've always said, and Father Gregory Boyle, who runs a amazing program out in California with gang affiliated individuals, has said something that I've always said. It's like made my new how I operate now, is at times we need to stand in awe at the burdens that people carry, as opposed to stand in judgment as to how they carry them. And that is essentially, how I wish to go about things, both on the bench and off the bench. You just don't know what people are going through. Everyone is on edge right now.
Man, are they ever?
everyone is on edge right now. The only way to take that edge off is to serve somebody else, period. That's the only way. No matter if that person can't stand you, no matter if that person has a different political, religious affiliation than you, if you wind up serving that person, they have to, at some point, they're going to change.
Look, Gerald, now you're talking crazy. We all know that whatever political camp you fall into, your camp has all the right ideas and the good people, and the other camp has all the bad ideas and they're the evil people. Everybody knows that. Doesn't matter which camp you're in. You have to draw a line in the sand and stick with your tribe, man. You can't extend a hand across and shake somebody's hand.
Man, that's why I became judge, and I would never run for any other any other branch, because as judge, I can be fair and impartial. I weigh the evidence. I look at somebody as an individual. If somebody came in front of me and was the head of the KKK, guess what? I'm still going to be fair and impartial to them. Do you know that I had a trial?
Go ahead.
I had a trial, and it was during jury selection, and there was a guy who you could tell he did not want to be selected for a jury. And I'm not going to stereotype, but let's just say he looked like an individual that was probably going to do what it took to get out of being a juror.
Roger that.
So I happened to read the form, and it said, "I am racist." Okay. So I was the judge. The defendant happened to be black. His attorney was black. And I had to encounter him during voir dire. I said, "I understand that you wrote this. Is this true?" He's like, "Absolutely." So we got him dismissed. So it's just like that was. So I would not encourage people to use that to get out of jury duty, because this is a PSA. You cannot do that. But at the same time, in this case, it would not have helped to have them on the jury. But at the same time, that was a wild, wild, wild ride there.
Yeah, the race thing is so interesting these days, and I know this is supposedly a fitness podcast, but we're just two guys talking here. So if you're not interested in this, you can shut off the podcast. We already told you how to start at your gym. Everything is just a race these days on the news, on everything. Like it's in every story. And as far as I can tell, looking at the news, you and I should be enemies, and we should not understand each other, and we shouldn't be able to have a civil conversation. And there should be a line in the sand, which seems so ridiculous to me. You being a black man in the CrossFit community, which seems to be colored as predominantly white, sitting as a judge, like you said, you were the first black man to occupy a certain position in your area, the whole 9 yards. You said when you, I'm going to paraphrase, but you said something like, in the violent crimes, I believe you said that come forward, like 40% of the individuals that you see are either people of color or black. And I'm gonna make the assumption that since you said that is not a linear representation of the percentage of the community. That's a disproportionate number of the community percentage base that you see in front of you. Not to put it all on you, but you're in the legal system. You see this every day. From your perspective, why is that? Why do you see a disproportionate number?
So what I want to clarify, 40% of my docket is African American. Okay. When it comes to violent crimes, there is no specific race. I mean, you come to my docket tomorrow, you're going to see just as many, if not more, white people who have been charged with violent crimes as you will see that's where it gets really interesting when it comes to
Okay, so it is spread.
Who is seen as more violent. Historically, it has been painted that African American men are essentially more violent than white men. But again, I can tell you right now, come to my docket, you'll be like, "Oh, absolutely not." Okay. Now, crime follows economics. There's socioeconomic structures that are in play. Of course, it sounds weird to say, but it's true. You kill people that are close to you. Okay. So when it's a predominantly African American community, that's under-resourced, that's underserved, that's undereducated, add guns. I don't think you need to be some sociologist to figure that out.
And you're probably going to find that in Appalachia with the poorest of white folks out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
No resources, no opportunities, abysmal education.
There you go. Where it gets kind of weird, though, is when it comes to you have to lift up the hood. You have to look underneath the hood, because there's a lot of folks that will say, "Look at Chicago. Chicago's one of the most dangerous places. Look at what's going on there." But why aren't we asking, why is there a Chicago in almost every major city across the country? And why does that Chicago look the way it does? Those are questions that also have to be asked.
Yes.
Because there's some similar patterns, and that does date back historically. As much as folks may feel uncomfortable, that does date back historically to not just Jim Crow, but of course civil rights era, and moving on from there. So you know, do your history and you read your history books. So that whole portion of segregation and underfunded, under-resourced, undereducated folks of color in these demographics, there's got to be a reason why that's taking place in every single one of these major metropolitan areas, and we see that right
You
here.
and I have chatted about this very topic previously,
Right.
and is it that those previous things are still being felt today, or are there still things in place in your understanding of the legal system that don't make any darn sense and need to be changed?
There's a lot of that, you know, especially when you unfortunately look at I actually have restrictive covenants from the 1960s and 70s for areas of parts of this area where if you were Jewish, if you were Black, you could not live in that. You cannot purchase that house. You cannot
That
live
still
on that.
exists to this day?
No, I'm saying I have those from like
I see.
30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
So when you say, well, that was 30, 40 years, you know, I'm sorry, 50, 60 years ago, I should say. Well, at the same time, those individuals weren't able to
It's not that long ago.
buy a house then. They were not able to pass that home on to their descendants and move
Right.
into their, you know, so generational wealth is a very, very important thing. But if everyone has been renting apartments for history after, you know, generation after generation, whereas another group has been able to purchase housing and go to school and colleges, then, I mean, you just got to look a little bit deeper into it. And
follow the bouncing ball on that one.
Following the bouncing ball, exactly right. But we may not have these restrictive covenants here today. But you can see like Dayton is pretty much split into East Dayton and West Dayton. You go into Cincinnati, it's the same where I grew up. There's parts that are just completely segregated in the schools and things like that. So we still have those things happening today. And
what
I don't know about.
I mean, do you throw money at the problem and it fixes it?
Yeah.
I mean, what helps? And it really helps. Like, it doesn't just look good as a campaign slogan, but moves, but really moves the needle. Because I'm a believer that if you improve, like a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you improve everyone's economic opportunities, like the entire world's a better place. Like, it's going to benefit if you bring a class up that is struggling. It's going to bring everybody else up because you're going to unlock economic potential, intellectual potential, all sorts of things from that community, and
Absolutely.
everyone's going to benefit from that. Like, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not just one thing. You know, just throwing money. I don't believe just throwing money at the problem is just going to be the only way. I will say, for my experience with what I'm doing with Kenda Court, is this: I've got individuals whose fathers, many of them's fathers were in the judicial system, right? And then there's this cycle where now they're in the judicial system, but their fathers at one time were sentenced to prison. Period. You know, so they're really starting from scratch when they come back. If I have the opportunity, which I do right now, to get 4 guys their GEDs, who no one in their family has ever graduated from high school or barely graduated from high school, if I get them their GED, also link them with we have a trades program here in Montgomery County. Link them with a trade to where they're starting trades, which honestly, college may not be the move for my daughters when they're coming up because it's going to be like $1 million a semester anyway. But if I had the opportunity,
I hear you right there.
If I had the opportunity to change the trajectory of that one individual, that changes his entire generation of kids behind him. You know, so yes, putting him in a place economically more stable is very much important. Education and getting a GED is very important as opposed to not having a high school diploma. Those little things are very, very important down the road. I may not see it, until it comes to fruition, but that child, the quicker I can get this man out of the justice system and moving forward, the better off his child is not going to follow through. And that is about as best that I can do in my role as a judge as well. Because many of these guys have absent fathers and they've had mothers who are addicted to drugs and they've been homeless ever since they were like 14, 15 years old.
Well, like we said, you and I got lucky. We just won the parent lottery.
We just won the parent lottery. I didn't do anything.
We had parents at home that, generally were good people and cared for us.
And that's actually one of the main reasons why I feel compelled to serve is because by the grace of God, I did not ask for any. I received parents that were able to help and assist and provide and move forward. So I feel like I have to do this because many of these individuals did not.
Well, it sounds like, there can't be this mass conversion event, right? Where this one amazing program that costs X money comes in and the tidal wave sweeps through and all the boats are risen. It's going to be maybe more grassroots to some degree, like you said earlier, with serving, right? Like think of how many hundreds of thousands or millions of people live in a particular city or greater metropolitan area. And like you said, don't make it overwhelming. If each one of those hundreds of thousands or millions of residents, if each person just served one day a month, that would be a tidal wave of support over the course of the coming weeks, months, and years.
We've talked about this before, but could you imagine if we ran our communities like CrossFit communities? You show up almost every single day to encourage somebody to complete something. You cheer them on, and then you look forward to the next time you get together, depending on what the work is. But you look forward to that group and coming back, and then that group continues to grow and serve. It's weird to see how sometimes I wish that our communities outside of the box, the gym, were like CrossFit communities.
With some people that I've interviewed before, and this is more the interviews that I do were specifically around people dealing with substance abuse issues.
Absolutely.
From their perspective, when the individuals, either they themselves or had worked with individuals that actually truly turned their lives around, like the stories that would just warm your heart, those individuals that did turn their life around, they might have been in programs 7 times before, or whatever happened to be, but for whatever reason, on that 8th time, they individually decided now is the time. I need to make a change, whether it was rock bottom or a certain conversation hit, but it wasn't that the program was any different than the 7 previous times they went through it. As they approached it differently, they were in the right place at the right time. Have you dealt with that in the Kenda Court of people who are either just going through the motions, and have you found any way to actually get that message through to somebody about you can elevate yourself if you make that decision?
Yeah, I got quite a few stories on that regard. Going back to substance abuse, there's studies that show that it takes up to 7 times of treatment before somebody, quote unquote, gets it. So studies show that it's like a one time, you didn't get it, let's just send you to prison. No, this has to be continual routine. Not to mention, I don't know about you, Pat, but the 20s were hard. Being in your 20s was kind of weird to figure out. This bills thing and insurance. I got to pay this stuff on my own now. And got mortgages and stuff. I didn't really understand that in my 20s until I got older.
It's a total bummer.
Right. So imagine, it's a bummer, right? But imagine you and I remember seeing, parents getting up every single day, going to work every single day. But if you did not grow up seeing that, what makes you think that this individual knows that he's supposed to do that every single day? Nobody told them to do that. We know that because we saw people do that, and people around us got up and went to work every single day. So we shouldn't be surprised. I've had a couple incidents with Kenda that have been important. We have a lot of guys that struggle with their significant others, right? One guy, he and his significant other, they split up. He has his own place, so he's moved on. Let's just say she was not happy with that and would show up, and we had just finished a portion on your significant others. It's actually entitled Baby Mama Drama. I hate that term, but it's actually used in the curriculum. But whatever. We all know
catchy. It sells.
We know what it means. Well, we had just gone through that section, and his ex-girlfriend, showed up because she wanted that TV back, right? And he, instead of confronting her like he would before and let her in, and then next thing you know, she's going around the home getting her stuff, and an argument ensues, something happens, and then instead of the cops being called, and then typically the male would likely get arrested and taken to jail. In this instance, not only did he call our probation officer, who does a great job, his name is L.A. Christian, called him and say, she's showing up. What should I do? I'm going to call the police. The police come, and he handled it that way. And that's about the best way you could have handled. We had another incident.
How does that make you feel?
We had another incident where we have unfortunately, like I said, some of these guys are from communities that gunshots is just normal. Okay. He goes home. He gets shot at. He and his brother, and somebody just comes up and they're just getting shot at. And I don't know the background. Can't really get into the background. He's on an ankle bracelet, ankle monitoring during the pendency of his probation. He calls our probation officer, and he's like frantic. He's crying. It's the most gut wrenching phone call, and he's just crying, saying, "I can't go home. I know I'm on ankle bracelet. I'm on an ankle bracelet, but I'm telling you where I'm going. I cannot go home right now. I can't. I'm not trying to get killed. I don't want to die today. I'm not going to die like this. I know I'm on probation. I just want you to know. Please tell Judge Parker I'll be there. I'm just scared." He just contacted someone who he felt would protect him and assist him to let him know that, listen, I'm not trying to die tonight, but I want you to know that I know I have. So we saw him later at Kenda Court, but those are wins right there.
Incredible wins.
Those are
man.
incredible wins that people don't realize that he
These
trusts.
are the stories that wish I'd read in the news.
Exactly. So it's just, those are the wins that you look at. And I just received a message from a guy who is now completed our curriculum in Kenda Court, and he just said that he's now selling, we're flipping houses. He's selling them. He just made 2 sales this past month. So you get these wins that you just have to take those, and you know there's going to be some losses. There's going to be some guys that just don't get it. But at least I can say that, as opposed to having done nothing, we have those wins. We have those guys that it might take them a while to get it. Going back to your 20s, like I was different from 20 to 25.
Oh,
Remember,
goodness, man.
18 to 29. These guys from 25 to 29 are typically more mature and start to get it. But remembering them when they're in their 20s, you know, I mean, it was hard enough with what we had in our 20s. But these guys in their 20s, it's just a different, a different environment.
I'll tell you what, man. This is why I feel very blessed to do what I do for a living. Get to have, and by that I mean get to have conversations with a broad range of individuals. Because if I'm being very honest about myself and my journey, when I look back at every decade of my life, I'm still a card-carrying idiot. But I was such an ignorant, closed-minded fool for so long. I think I just didn't know what I didn't know. Like, I would be lying to you if I didn't say, you could tell me the story of the person from, the tough upbringing that didn't have, a father figure or surrounded by bad decisions. And I'd just be like, suck it up, make a good decision. What are you talking about?
Right.
Like, that's up to you. Like, what a completely idiotic thing. I just didn't know what I didn't know. Like, so it's amazing, refreshing, educational, and very mind opening to have these conversations, because it's a very big world. And when you interact with people that are dealing with a different segment of society, looking at things through a different lens, hearing different stories about how people got into certain situations, the stresses that they're dealing with, to me,
Right.
it's nothing but benefit, which is precisely why I wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah.
I always enjoy talking to you.
No, I appreciate it. One of the great things about this role, particularly with these specialized dockets that our courts have, is when you're on these specialized dockets, you get to lean in just a little bit more and hear their story and where they came from. And when you find out where a person comes from, when you learn about what they've gone through, you're going to want to serve them. You're going to want to help. There's not a person I know that if I went up to them and said, "Hey, could you help me in this?" randomly, they would say, "Yes, I will." And that's generally how we operate as people. We just don't know how to do it because we're so glued in a little bit more to thinking everybody has it great, everybody's fine. Oh, there's a few people coming out with panic attacks and anxiety, but that's just a few. No, we've got a lot of folks out here who are really, really in need and just want to be seen and be heard. Not just the folks on the margins, like I see in our court system, but your neighbors, your folks in your organizations that just want to be seen and just want to be heard. So, I just encourage everybody to care for one another. And like I said, when you ask, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" Like, wait for that answer and really wait and listen to that answer.
Help each other out because we're all in this together.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So, like I said before, I'm going to try to have our editor put in the show notes the video that you sent about the Kenda Court. I think that'd be really great for everybody to see that. So if you're listening or watching this, go to btwb.com, go to the show notes and see if you can't find that video there. And I guess lastly, Gerald, any places you want to point people, websites, points of contacts, resources for, whatever it happens to be, go ahead and let us know.
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm the president of nonprofit bbyouth.org, Building Bridges, which is a great organization, just so you can get some information about what courts are doing as well. Montgomery County Common Pleas Court General Division is where I am. You can see a lot of the things that we do in this court system. I think there's just a misnomer about what judges really do. And I think kind of like, oh, you just get up there and you decide, I think I'm going to sentence you to prison today. No, it's a lot more in depth than that. We do a lot of decisions and we do serve. And right now, state courts have the most confidence from our public. When you get to that federal level, that's another animal. We're not going there. But your state courts are really trying to help serve. That doesn't mean we get it right 100% of the time. We are people too. But there are a lot of judges around this country, a lot of judges, particularly in our community, that really are here to serve. I think that we get drowned out by the judge that is looking ridiculously foolish out on a public trial, or a member from our executive branch or legislative branch, or of course what's going on in Washington. But please pay attention to what's going on in your local politics and your local folks who are serving. Your local public servants are the ones that matter most, so don't forget about those folks. So,
Gerald, I appreciate it, man. Nothing but respect for what you do and everything you're representing. Please keep it up, man.
Man, thanks for having me. I know it's a little different than having us talk about some new work.
So I'd rather talk about this than deadlifts any day of the week.
Can I say the one piece of advice that you gave me?
Yeah, sure.
From a podcast, I was listening to one of your podcasts months ago, and this is from a now 41-year-old who started CrossFit at 30 years old. Was I've hit the point where there was a workout at our gym. I think we do hard work pays off. I think that's the program. And it was 400 reps. It was like 100 reps of front squats, 100 reps of push jerks, 100 reps of sumo deadlifts, and 100 reps of something else ridiculous, right? 400. And you had 20 minutes to complete. Okay. So most people got through right. So people got through 2/3 and then they died, of course, and then they felt like crap the rest of the week. Pat, when you said to throw the time away and just do the workout, I went in my garage and I just did 10 sets of everything on my own time. It took 40 minutes, and which is what I would do if I went to like your normal Globo gym back in the day. So frankly, that clock has been shut off quite a bit, and I'm just doing some of your workouts, linchpin and all those stuff just to do them and to move. So I appreciate that piece of advice. So that's my advice. That's what I want to say as far as a thank you to you, because that probably helped save a few rotator cuff injuries moving forward, brother.
Well, I'm happy to hear that the scales are still unevenly tipped with me still owing you way more, but we'll keep that going. Hopefully our paths will cross in an actual physical occasion sometime in the future and grab a meal or a cup of coffee. But as I always say to everybody at the end of these shows, we appreciate all of you. If you've got ideas of topics, guests, or whatever for an upcoming show, send them in email, post them on Instagram when we post the show on the Very Not Random Instagram account. Go to the BTWB YouTube channel, find the show, post your comments, thoughts on this, thoughts on the legal system in general. That'd be an amazing topic. And, implementing programs like this at your gym, whatever you happen to have, we read those comments, we pay attention to them, and all of you help drive the show. Go to verydnotrandom.com, check out the programs and cycles that we offer to help support the show. And 100% appreciated having Gerald here. And for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.